This meeting is being recorded.
In this video, we'll be seeing about digestion and absorption. To begin with, we should know what exactly is nutrition. Nutrition is the process by which we take in food and we utilize the energy from the food and use it for certain activities. This is called as nutrition. So the basis of nutrition lies in the food that we take. So if you look at what are the things that food provides us, it provides us with the basic energy for all the life activities such as respiration, locomotion, circulation. It gives us all the important materials that is required for the human body growth. Third, it helps in the maintenance of body temperature. And apart from that, there is one significant process, rather a phenomenon called as homeostasis, which we read in the first chapter. That is also instigated and maintained exclusively by the food that we take. And finally, it also helps in the repair of the broken, damaged, or harmed tissues. What are the basic nutrients that we get from food? The first one is carbohydrates, followed by proteins, fats, which includes the lipids as well, vitamins, minerals, and overall water. Water plays the most important role in the metabolic processes because if only water is there, all kinds of transportation will be taking place smoothly between different parts of the body and the organs also. The whole of the digestive system, sorry, the whole of the digestive system can be divided into two categories. One is the alimentary canal, which is called as the gut, and the next is the digestive glands, which means the associated glands along with the gut: mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus form the part of the alimentary canal or the gut. The salivary glands, gastric glands, liver, pancreas, and the intestinal glands. All these together form the digestive glands or the associated glands. One of the salient features of these alimentary canal and the digestive glands, how do we differentiate it? During the process of digestion, we can find that the food actually passes through the alimentary canal, that is the gut. The food passes through it. But if you take the associated glands, the digestive glands, food does not pass through the digestive glands, but the secretions of these glands actually influence the food that is passing through the alimentary canal. To begin with, we'll start with the mouth and the buccal cavity. The mouth is considered to be the first open organ to receive the food, and the process by which we consume the food, we just receive the food with our mouth, is called as ingestion. The first place the food goes inside our mouth is the space that is enclosed within the mouth, which is called as the buccal cavity. This buccal cavity is also called as the oral or the mouth cavity. Now this buccal cavity consists of a palate. This is upper palate, and this consists of the teeth and the muscular tongue. This palate is also called as the roof. This palate is divided into two parts. One is anterior palate, which is called as the hard palate, and if you go a little posterior, the backward of the hard palate, you call it as a soft palate. We can also sense it by just grabbing our tongue and completely flooring it on the upper side of our roof of the mouth. we'll be able to find that the anterior part is very hard, and we call that as the hard palate, and the posterior part, which is very soft, called as the posterior soft palate. And there is a special organ called as the tongue, which is present in the floor of the oral cavity. This is a muscular organ, meaning it does not have any bones or it does not have any cartilage. But this tongue, which is a muscular organ, is attached to the floor of this oral cavity with the help of a frenulum. This tongue has small projections on its surface. For example, if this is going to be the tongue, there is going to be small projections like this on the surface of the tongue, which is called as the papillae. And these are the papillae, just magnifying the diagram of a papillae. They'll contain small structures on them, which is called as the taste buds. So it is these taste buds which decide what is the kind of taste we are having from different kinds of foods. At the back of either side of the tongue, we'll be finding tongue tonsils. And if this grows in a little excess, then it has to be operated. The human dentition. The nature and how the teeth is arranged is called as dentition. So the nature and mode of arrangement of teeth is called as dentition. The human dentition is heterodont, thecodont, and diphyodont. We'll see about the meaning of these three. What is the meaning of heterodont dentition? Heterodont means there are different kinds of teeth that are present. For example, if you take human beings, we have incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. So there are 4 different kinds of teeth in human beings. The incisors are used for cutting the food, whatever we take, and the canines are used for tearing the food. The premolars help in mastication of the food, which means completely grinding, chewing the food with the salivary secretions, and the molars also do the same function. The premolars and the molars are both collectively called as the cheek teeth, and they have a cusp. Cusp means, since this is a molar teeth, we are able to find that there is a bending on the top surface of the molar. This is how the molar will appear, and this small hike and this small bend here together is called as a cusp. So both the molars and the premolars have cusps. Thecodont dentition means the teeth are placed in the jaw sockets. We can find that the incisors are placed in a jaw socket, the canines are placed in the jaw socket, the premolars and the molars, and every teeth is placed inside a jaw socket. This is called as the thecodont dentition. Diphyodont means the teeth appears twice in the lifetime of an individual, and the first teeth that appear, they are called as the milk teeth, and once the milk teeth falls and the second set of teeth develops, that is called as the permanent teeth. So in the milk teeth, which is also called as the decidual teeth, there are just 20 in number, and this develops when the infant is 6 to 7 months of birth, and they are completely replaced by the set of permanent teeth at the age of 6 to 7, and the permanent teeth are total of 32 in number. The last 4 molars appear only at the age of 18, so they are also called as the wisdom teeth. The teeth, which consist of many parts, contains the topmost chewing surface, the outermost part, which is also called as the hardest part, and it is made of a substance called as the enamel. Finally, we'll get into the dental formula. Dental formula talks about the different kinds of teeth that is present in the human beings, along with the number of teeth that is present in the upper jaw and in the lower jaw. The human dental formula for permanent teeth: incisors, I represent incisors, C represent canines, PM represents premolars, and M represents molars. They've given here 2 by 2. So let us understand what does the first 2 stand for and what does second 2 stand for. Now if you look at the whole structure of the mouth, how the teeth are arranged, if we can draw a line here, we are able to find that there are 2 incisors that is found on one half of the upper jaw. So this is the upper jaw, this is the lower jaw. And when I divide the upper jaw into two axes, the right axis and the left axis, on the right axis we are able to find 2 incisors, and on the left axis we are able to find 2 incisors. And on the right we are able to find one canine, and the left we are able to find one canine. So what they have written here is they have just taken one side of one jaw into consideration, which means when we are putting the floral formula, we are putting 2 by 2, which means 2 on the upper jaw and 2 on the lower jaw. So this I2 represents the 2 incisors on the right axis of the upper jaw, and these 2 of the incisors represent the lower axis, right axis of the lower jaw. And the same to the canines, premolars and the molars. So we have represented the total number of teeth that is present on one axis. Either it is the right axis or either it is the left axis. So the dental formula completely represents the total number of teeth that is present on one axis. And that is why we put into 2. When we put into 2, it means the total number of teeth that is present is double the fold of whatever is the number that we have depicted. So the total number of teeth for a human permanent set is 32. If you look at the dental formula for milk dentition, the milk teeth, there is a complete absence of the premolars. And the molars are also not fully developed, since the final molars develop only at the age of 18. So the total number of teeth will be found is just 20 in milk dentition. Next is the pharynx. The pharynx is the common passage for both digestive and the respiratory system. So if the oxygen or the mixture of gases has to get in, or the food that we take in has to go in, it has to pass through a common passage, and that passage is called as the pharynx. So when the food materials pass through the pharynx, there is something that is called as epiglottis. This epiglottis is made up of a cartilage, which means it's not made up of a bone, but it's made up of a false bone, a flexible bone, that is a cartilage. So this epiglottis completely closes the opening of the larynx, which means it closes the glottis so that it prevents the entry of food into trachea. So it is something like a flip-flap mechanism. So what happens in this flip-flap mechanism is, once the food is going in, the epiglottis completely closes the glottis so that only the air passage is open or the food passage is open, and both do not interfere with each other. What will happen if food goes into the trachea? And that's what will lead to complications. So that is why it is always advised not to speak while eating. Next is the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube which is around just 30 centimeters, and that is which conducts the food into the stomach. The posterior part of the esophagus, this whole is the esophagus, The posterior part of the esophagus is called as the gastroesophageal sphincter, and it is the muscle which will control the opening of the esophagus into the stomach. So at this particular part, we'll be able to find the gastroesophageal sphincter. And even in this portion, we'll be finding one more sphincter at the the anterior part, and that will regulate the movement of food from the stomach into the small intestine. So the stomach has two sphincters. Now getting into stomach, the stomach is a J-shaped structure, and it is a place for storage and digestion of food. It is totally divided into three parts. One is the upper fundus, second is the middle cardiac stomach, and the third one is the lower pyloric stomach, which is also called the antrum. This pyloric stomach leads to the small intestine. So this pyloric stomach further connects to the small intestine. Here we are able to find that as written as duodenum, because that is a part of the small intestine. And this pyloric stomach is connected by a small opening, and that opening is called as the pylorus. And this pylorus is guarded by a special muscle called as the pyloric sphincter. So the pyloric sphincter regulates the food from the stomach to the small intestine. The inner wall of the stomach consists of many longitudinal folds that is called as the rugae, which you are able to find in the diagram. The small intestine is considered to be the longest part of the gut. It consists of a 7-meter long structure, which is also having a diameter of 2.5 centimeter. Although it is 7-meter long, it is very condensely packed and reticulated and kept very safely, as a result of which we are not able to find its exclusive coiling outside, nor we are able to sense it, the heaviness. The small intestine consists of three parts. The duodenum, that is the C-shaped part. To mark it in the diagram, the place where it exactly starts and gets projected from the stomach. The second one is jejunum, which is the middle part. All the coiled part together where the major area or the site of digestion takes place, that is the jejunum. And finally, the ileum. The ileum is the final part, the last protruding part from the small intestine, which connects to the large intestine. In the small intestine, we are able to find finger-like structures from the inner membrane of the small intestine. So these finger-like projections that arises due to the inner folding of the inner membrane, or due to the inner folding of a layer called as the mucosa. So what is this mucosa? Mucosa forms one of the layers of the gut. The gut, if you look at the histology of gut, it is divided into 4 different layers: mucosa, submucosa, and so on. We'll be seeing about it later. And these finger-like villi are seen in the mucosal region of the small intestine. Each of these villi has a brush-bordered columnar epithelium layer. We all know that the internal layer is made up of epithelial cells, the internal lining, and here the small intestine consists of columnar epithelial cells, and along with that it consists of a border which appears like a brush. So it consists of brush-bordered columnar epithelial cells, and it is provided with microvilli. This villus consists of a capillary network, which means it is containing a lot of connections with arteries and veins, and also a small lymph vessel, which is also called as the lacteal. The large intestine and the anus. The large intestine is an organ which is 1.5 meter long, and it has got three parts. It has got cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and a rectum. So all these ascending, transverse, transverse and the descending colon together, they are called as the colon. The cecum is well developed in herbivorous, but it is very small in man. And finally, the rectum opens up into the anus, through which the waste materials are ejected out in the process of excretion. And exactly in the place where the cecum is originating, there is a small protruding structure which is called as the vermiform appendix. And it is this appendix which grows in a little longer, will be having a lot of pain in the abdominal region, and that will lead to an operative surgery, a procedure called as the appendicitis. So next is the colon. The colon, as I said, consists of an ascending colon which goes from down to up, and the transverse colon going across the transverse longitudinal region, and finally a descending colon which completely falls down. If you look at the rectum, the pelvic colon, the last bend that is formed from the descending colon to the rectum is called as the pelvic colon, and it finally opens up into the anus. This whole portion is called as the rectum. The anus is guarded by another muscle which is called as the anal sphincter muscle. And this anal sphincter is the one which will regulate and control the exit of waste materials from the body. And these are voluntary muscles, which means they work under the human will. In some herbivores, the large intestine consists of a lot of cellulose digesting bacteria because they consume a lot of food, and these food are basically plant-based foods. And if one has to consume the plant-based foods, it has a lot of cellulose since they have cell wall. And if they have to be degraded and digested, then it has to be done exclusively with cellulose digesting bacteria. And that is the reason the herbivores have a lot of cellulose digesting bacteria in their gut. As I told earlier, the histology of human gut. If you look at a transverse section of the human gut, it will show 4 layers. The first one is the mucosa. I hope you're following the diagram parallelly. The mucosa is the innermost, moist, which means it has some water content in it always, epithelial layer. So it's made up of epithelial cells. It contains secretory and absorptive cells, which means it has got cells which are capable of secreting chemicals, and they have got some cells which is capable of absorption of food and energy molecules as well. The second one is the submucosa. The submucosa layer is a soft connective tissue that is present just outside the mucosa, and it contains nerves, blood cells. So all the connections are basically done only in the submucosal region. The third one is the muscularis. It is further outside to the submucosa. It is made up of smooth muscles, which means it will not have any partitions in it. It will not have any striations in it. And finally the serosa, which consists of the outermost complete fibrous layer. So this is how the human gut is designed. Throughout the human gut, if we find, there will be 4 different layers: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis and serosa. So we are seeing it from the inside to the outside. If it is going to be outside to inside, it is serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. In the next video, we'll see about digestive glands.